Hello! In this tutorial we'll see how to create objects in 3D Studio, basic objects, primitive objects. In this panel here in this side we have some tabs. The first one is the Creation tab. This tab opens the options to create new geometry, shapes, lights and some other stuff we see in the future. And we are going to create the standard primitives. We can create the standard primitives, extended primitives, and we are now creating standard geometry, standard primitives. Primitives are basic geometrical objects, very basic, like box, sphere, cylinder, cone, pyramid, etc. In order to create a new object, we have to choose in which viewport we are going to create it, because it's not the same to create a cylinder in the top view. We create a cylinder like that, and it's different from creating a cylinder in the front view. We create like that. Okay, we first create the basis, and then we create the height on every object here. So depending on the object, we create, I don't know, or for example a cone. We first create the base, then the height, and then we decide the I don't know, this thing here. Or for example a pyramid, we create the base, then the height. If we create in a different view, we create the base first and then the height. Okay, we can see this new pyramid here by rotating the camera. Every new object created by this method has its own name and its own color. Remember that names are important in 3D programs, because if you remember in our last tutorial we saw this method, this selection method here. We can select the cone one, like this one, or this one, or this one. So it's important to add a new name if you want to identify your object. For example, this one is going to be the cylinder, the blue one. Now I can find here the blue one, easy. Alright. We can also create a new object, for example a box, using this method, keyboard entry. Imagine I want a box in the center of the scene. This is the very center of the scene, is 0, 0, 0. For example, I want this box to be 500 millimeters, 500 millimeters, and 500 millimeters, and then I create it exactly in the middle of the scene with the size of 500 millimeters. Sorry. The objects are both created and aligned in its center here. So I got the center here, and I got the center exactly in the 0 point in every axis in the scene. Every primitive object has its own different parameters. For example, a box, we can choose between the length, the width, and the height. But in the case of a sphere, we can choose between its radius and just the segments. We'll see now. In the case of the cylinder, we can choose the base and the height, radius of the base and the height. In the case of the torus, it's a little bit more complicated because we have to choose the outer radius and the inner radius. In the case of the cone, we choose the base and the height, and then the angle of the second radius of the closing of the cone. Geosphere is a little bit more complicated as well. It's a sphere but with different polygonation in it. Tube, more or less the same as a torus. We create the outer radius, the inner radius, and then the height here. Pyramid, just the base with the both sizes, on the height, and the plane, just the plane. This is a very simple one. Those are more or less all the primitive objects we have in the 3D Studio, plus a teapot, the Utah Teapot. You can find an interesting video in the comments of the video about the history and the why is a teapot here. But it's very useful. It's very useful primitive objects, and it has sense somehow to have these objects among the primitives here. One common parameter that all those objects share is the segments that conform the objects. Depending on the segments, depending on the segmentation of the objects in every size, we'll have an object with more quality or more smooth. Not like this teapot is not very smooth, but this sphere is very smooth because we got lot segments here. Once the object is created, we can modify the object, and that's the second tab here. When we select an object, and in the second tab, this is the modifier tab, we can change its parameters here and the segmentation. We can choose to have a, I don't know, sphere with just 12 or 24. I don't know. Every object has the same parameter here, the size or the segmentation. This one has just one segmentation in every face. This one has lots of segments here, fewer segments here, like 48. You can see here, and 48 here. Those parameters can be changed every time, since those are primitive objects, and primitive objects can be changed every time in the during the process. Okay, that's it. We have got a bunch of primitive objects here. We're going to delete them to see the next option here, which is the modifiers. In order to do that, we're going to create a cylinder in the top view. Okay, this is a very high cylinder, and we are going to bend it. Here we have some modifiers. Here we have some modifiers. By default, they are you can customize them, and we have here the modifier list. We have lots of modifiers. You are not going to use all of them, but it's interesting to try some of them. The first one I'm going to try is the bend one. The bend one is in order to bend the object. I'm going to bend 90 degrees, and you can see the object is bent 90 degrees. I'm going to bend it 180 degrees, for example. I want it to be bigger now. Here is a very interesting panel. You have like this is the original object. This is the modifier applied on the object. Okay, I can turn off the modifier in order to see the original object, or I can go to the original object and modify it. I can increase the height that way. As you can see, the object is a little bit rough because I need more subdivisions here in order to create a smooth curve. I'm going to height segments. I'm going to choose 24. Okay. Now you see, since I got more subdivisions, the curve is smoother, and the results are much better. This is more or less the first of the workflows we are going to see in 3D Studio. I create a basic object like a cylinder, and then I apply a modifier in order to create some other complex object. All right, we have got lots of modifiers. I'm not going to explain to you all of them, but the most useful are those one I got here. We'll see in the future. I think that's enough for now. Thank you very much and good luck.